Hey everyone, welcome to Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard, an audio podcast. Got a really great guest on today. She's an independent designer and educator. Her practice and research explores the intersection of culture, identity, equity, and risograph printing within the field of design. She is currently an assistant professor of communication design at Parsons School of Design in New York City. Please join me in welcoming Elaine Lopez. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi.
Are you ready for 20 questions?
Yes.
Great. Question one. Tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do?
So you gave a pretty good description there. Like you said, I teach design at Parsons School of Design in the communication design program. And aside from that, I have my own practice where I work with a lot of different cultural institutions, usually universities, and centers within universities on projects related to the arts, usually. And also other types of design projects, whatever comes my way through my studio, Low Press.
Great. And just a note for the audience, if you guys are interested in other communication design episodes, please check out our recent episode with Tobias Furr Jones. Question two. What's a key piece of knowledge that makes you different?
This was a really interesting question that I thought a lot about. I suppose maybe I have a question back for you. Makes me different than what?
Yeah, than others, or what makes you unique?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I suppose this could be seen interpreted in a lot of ways. As an educator, I think my knowledge of Riso printing is something that is, I wouldn't say completely different, but a little bit more unique within the field of design education. And that's mostly because it is a newer sort of technology within the education space, even though Riso printers have been around since the 80s, 90s. They really only have been used by artists and illustrators and designers. Um, More recently, I'd say in the last like 10 to 20 years. And so a lot of schools have begun adapting these machines and using them for education. And so um, being able to teach the Riso, I think, is one thing that sets me apart, I think, within the education context. I would say as a designer, something that makes me different is I think like my career and all of the different ways that I've practiced design. Um, I started in pharmaceutical marketing and then did advertising and then human-centered design for social impact. Then I went to grad school to get an MFA in design and then entered academia. And now my practice has sort of shifted again to be more related to arts and culture. So I think um, as a designer, having had all these experiences makes me pretty unique. Not that many designers from my generation or age haven't also probably pivoted many times. But I think it's helpful to be able to draw from all of these different experiences.
Great. I love that. Okay, question three. Why this of all things? Why do you do what you do?
Well, I think probably also like many people, I began it began with an interest in, art and doodling and drawing, which I was pretty passionate about in grade school. And then when I got to college, I wasn't really sure exactly what to study. It was sort of between history and art. And so at the University of Florida, where I studied, they have this program called Warp. I don't know if they still have it, but I think the intention is to like a really big crash course in modern art and conceptual thinking. And after taking that class my first semester, it was very intense, and it was also meant to weed out people who really weren't serious about art. After that, it was sort of recommended that I look into design, and I really didn't have a lot of experience into what that was at the time. So I signed up for a design class, and it was really, really challenging compared to the other classes I'd been taking at the time. So classes on like illustration or photography. A lot of the other art majors, I suppose, or the art classes felt a little bit more natural, but design was this sort of other beast that required, knowledge of software and typography, and it was hard, and I think that's ultimately why I ended up choosing it. It just felt like a good challenge, and also for economic reasons, right? A career in design at the time, and I think still is perceived to be more lucrative, or to at least have more opportunities. And so I think those two factors sort of made me choose design, and um, yeah, have ended up doing this now for a very, very, very long time. And I enjoy it. I think another way to look at this question would be like, why do I do what I do? And I also would uh, consider being in design education as a choice. I could be any kind of designer, but I definitely got into education specifically to be able to bring my wide experience to students, but also acknowledging that there aren't many Latina design professors, and so I felt sort of a responsibility to be, in the industry, and have some representation for other younger minority women to see themselves reflected in this field.
Perfect. So some people struggle with number four, and the question is, what does your future look like?
I wonder why. I think it's a challenging question. I don't know. Especially these days with everything being as complicated, and change happening so rapidly, right? AI, I think, is a topic on a lot of people's minds, and I don't think we'll know how it will impact all of our fields. And so I truly don't know what the future will look like for me. I think for now I'm teaching. I'm about to enter a sabbatical year, which I'm very excited about. So I would say my near future in this next year will look a little different than the past so far, in that I will have a little bit more free time to sort of explore um, projects and interests that I've had. And so I'm looking forward to that. And I hope that through that exploration, maybe I can better answer this question in a year.
Great. So five we say is unique to this show. The question is, let's talk about location. How does the notion of place play into what you do?
Yeah, this question is interesting too. I think place is important. I don't know. I guess I'll interpret it in my own way, and relate it to all of the places that I've worked and have been able to practice design. And I think from that perspective, it's a really important factor in what I do. So I began my career in Chicago, where I spent um, many years, almost 10 years, practicing design there. And I think that had a huge influence in, I mean, who I am as a person, and also just the way that I engaged with design. Primarily, like the industries in Chicago at the time were more related, towards commercial products, but also there was a strong um, social justice and activist sort of spirit in Chicago at that time. And I think those two things were really big influences on me. And then I left that place and moved to Providence, Rhode Island to get my MFA. And that had an enormous impact that I think I'm still benefiting from. And in that sense, place was also very critical, being in a program such as that, with all of the people that I met, and all of the ideas I was able to engage with, and projects I was able to um, try out, new skills, all of that, I think was immensely influential. And then after that, I lived in Philadelphia for about 4 years. And this was, I would say, a period of displacement to a certain degree, because although I was living in Philadelphia, I was commuting to teach. So I taught at the Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore. So I spent a lot of time commuting back and forth between Philadelphia. And then after that, I began teaching in New York, first at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. So that also required a little bit of displacement and commuting, and later teaching at Parsons in Manhattan. And I would say that was challenging, and it made me maybe value location a little bit more. It was difficult to sort of build community and be with friends, or even feel uh, grounded when I was sort of traveling between places. I mean, it was wonderful because I did get to benefit from perhaps being in two places at once. But I've been in New York now for a little while, and that's been a lot more grounding for me, I think, and mainly because of the people. Um, it's been really wonderful being close to many friends, and then just also meeting all of the wonderful people. There's so many cool people and things that happen here in New York. So I think from that sense, location is very critical now to what I'm doing.
Great. So six, you're starting from the beginning. What advice do you give your former younger self?
I think it's something I think a lot about, especially working with students and remembering, what it felt like to be 20 years old. And I think patience would be probably a bit of advice that I think earlier in my career I was pretty impatient about, getting a cool job or being promoted or being just very eager and anxious about opportunities. And I think now that I've been doing this a long time, I realize everything comes in due time. And so I would advise my younger self to just slow down a little bit and enjoy the ride and have faith that things would sort of work out.
Great. And seven, what's a day in your life like?
Um, my days are pretty different depending on whether I'm teaching or not. I think if on the days that I'm teaching, I get up pretty early and head to campus and teach. Usually, all of my classes start at 9 a.m. And that usually leads to a day of being on campus and sort of having meetings there or engaging with activities related to that aspect of my work. And then on days that I don't teach on campus, um, I work from my home, and that is also nice. And that ends up looking like a lot of Zoom calls or just a lot of deep work, just trying to catch up and get things done. So I'd say I sort of oscillate between those two states, at least for the next 4 weeks before my sabbatical kicks in.
Perfect. And eight is about lifelong learning. It's a popular topic. How do you stay up to date?
I think the best way to lifelong learn is to teach, actually. Nothing has taught me more than teaching. And that's because you learn a lot from students. And also, when you have to teach people things, you sort of have to refresh yourself and just stay current on whatever it is that you're teaching. And so it sort of forces you to constantly engage or be up to date with trends or whatever it is that you're sort of working on, and then also seeing how young people are engaging with design or engaging with whatever they're working with is very illuminating, and just I think definitely keeps me pretty fresh and up to date.
Great. And nine is about tools. Can you talk about your use of digital and or analog tools?
Yeah, as a designer, I think there are many too many tools these days. Um, the Adobe Suite is still sort of industry standard for certain types of projects, especially related to print. More and more now I use Figma, as it's a great, uh, obviously a great tool for web-based projects and also collaboration. So really helpful for collaborating with other designers or even sharing work with clients. And then I am becoming more interested in analog tools. Actually, I think I consider the Riso to be a bit of an analog tool in that it's this giant clunky printer that produces physical objects. And I think as we see a prevalence in AI, there's going to be I hope, sort of a look back to analog tools that help us have evidence of like the human hand a little bit more. And so I'm I'm interested in the Riso for that reason, among many other reasons. But I'm also going to be taking a mimeograph printing class at the Center for Book Arts in a few weeks that I'm really excited about because I also want to engage with these older tools that maybe have come out, you know, become obsolete, but perhaps there's something we can learn from engaging with these tools and start working with them in new ways.
Great. And halfway number 10, how do you deal with work-life or life-work balance?
Historically pretty poorly, but I've tried to be a lot better about it lately. I think as one gets older, you realize like the importance of health and really um, taking care of one's body and mind. And so I've I have a yoga practice and Pilates, and I try to exercise as much as possible. And I find that that's been really helpful in managing stress and anxiety. And then also slowing down a little bit. I think before I used to have this sense of urgency and want to finish things immediately, and now I find myself like, okay, let's pace things out a little bit so that I'm gentler on myself and I'm able to sort of enjoy life a little bit more and have it not just be about work. And so, yeah, those are some ways lately that I've tried to do that. And then, like I mentioned, being in New York, I have a lot of friends around, so always making time to, go hang out and visit people, go to their homes, or grab a drink or food. I think has been really, really helpful in maintaining a balance and realizing that life isn't all about work.
Great. And if you weren't doing what you do now, what might you be doing?
I've answered this question on different podcasts, and I think maybe it still stands. I really like pressure washing. So, um, just cleaning concrete, that would be really fun. Maybe I could do a pressure washing business. I don't know. I think being sitting in front of the computer so often lately has me sort of fantasizing about more physical or other ways of working that aren't related to technology at all. And I know that there's a lot of talk of this these days that services like plumbing and all of these other more very physical jobs are going to become more in demand as AI continues to um, perhaps make automate a lot of people's jobs or make things a little bit easier to do. So I don't know if I'd like really be doing that, but it is something I enjoy. So that's how I'll answer this question.
Great. And 12, what would you not like to do with your career?
Um, it's a good question. I think I mentioned earlier, I've done a lot of things with my career as a designer. So it's hard to say what I wouldn't do at this point because I feel like I've done a little bit of everything. I would say, having worked, I was going to say like having worked at a big company or an office uh, in the past, and now for many years having worked a little bit more autonomously within academia and also having my own practice. I think the thought of going back to an office feels a little weird. Although lately, I wonder if that would be nice. So I don't know. I don't know what I wouldn't do. Obviously, projects that are morally or ethically dubious or questionable, I would probably steer away from, or anything that does harm to other people or the environment. Although hard to say what does or doesn't do harm in within capitalism in this day and age. But as much as possible to try to use design or whatever it is that I'm doing in positive, beneficial ways.
Great. And do you have a favorite word, quote, or sentence?
I I think a quote that I revisit often, at least as it relates to design, is one by or by Charles Eames specifically. Um, and it's that the role of the designer is that of a very good, thoughtful host, anticipating the needs of the guest. And I think it's something that's resonated with me throughout my career as a designer. Um, Always trying to make sure that whatever it is that I'm making is going to serve the intended audience, and to try to anticipate challenges or add things that are going to be beneficial to that set audience.
Great. And do you have a least favorite word, quote, or sentence?
Mm, I don't think so. Not that I can think about at the moment. I guess it's difficult without additional context, but I'll skip this one if that's allowed.
Yeah. So you're choosing one word to describe yourself. What word do you choose?
Hmm. Hmm. It's tough too. Uh, I think well, I don't know. I guess it might be two words, but community oriented or um, yeah, I really like to foster community within my classroom and um, within the spaces that I'm in, mostly because I think this is what is important or at least enjoyable about life is being in community with people whom you have shared interests and I think fostering that is pretty important.
Great. And what keeps you up at night?
Mm. The cost of tuition at most institutions here in the US I think is really unfortunate, and I know we're seeing a lot of changes within academia, especially as our government here is trying to reduce access to funding for people to be able to attend graduate programs and undergraduate programs. I think that's a catastrophe, but I also think the cost in the first place is a catastrophe here. I don't think education should honestly cost anything, and certainly not what it costs these days. I think it's a fundamental, basic human right to receive an education, and I think I wish that institutions in the US would figure out a better way to provide education to young people.
Great. And final stretch here. What's a dream you're chasing?
Mm. Also a difficult question. I think that, harkens back to the future question. It would be great to be independently wealthy. I don't know if that's a dream per se, but um, yeah, I don't know. I think it would be really nice not to have to worry um, about resources or financial things to allow me to better be able to focus on making work that is perhaps a little bit more artistic or less reliant on clients and funding and things like that. I think, um, yeah, it would be nice, and that's a dream I think worth chasing.
Great. So 18, what inspires you?
Mm, I think just seeing creativity in a lot of different forms is really inspirational. As one does when you visit a museum and encounter a lot of really creative art. I find that to be very inspiring. I find films to be very inspiring, and how people can tell stories through that medium. I think is really wonderful, and then ultimately my students too. I find them very very inspirational, and seeing um, how they engage with design, having learned it only recently, right? And then really taking those skills and making really cool and interesting projects, I think keeps me inspired and helps me in my own practice.
Great. And last couple here. Number 19, any advice you'd like to share?
Um, hmm, uh, I guess something I've been thinking a lot about lately is being mindful of how one feels as they're working on projects, like and making sure that that experience is positive, so that when the project is complete and eventually exists out in the world, that you have like a positive association to that work. I think ultimately that's like more important sometimes than the final output. And I guess the flip side to this is, having a very challenging experience working on a project for whatever reason, and then having that project, maybe look very aesthetically pleasing or become successful, and then not being able to like enjoy that in the end, right? Like whenever you look at that project or think about that, you remember the time or the experience of working on it. And so I would say I would encourage people to just be mindful of the experiences of working on projects for yourself and also for maybe collaborators or team members that you're working on things with, and make sure that we're keeping our humanity and being conscientious of the people involved so that those experiences are pleasant.
Great. And finally, number 20, how can our listeners keep tabs on you and what's our call to action?
I am available on Instagram, so my handle is elopez12, and um, my website is elainelopez.design. I think those are probably the best places to keep in touch. What was the second part of your question?
A call to action. Is there something that we should be doing?
Oh, no, but I did want to plug. I actually noticed that you and I may be meeting in a month at a conference in Vancouver. Is that correct? Are you going to be at the RGD conference?
That's right. I'm speaking there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's my plug, and I look forward to meeting you. So I would say folks should attend that conference. I'm going to be speaking at the education portion. Um, And I think I'm like the keynote speaker. I didn't realize that until I looked at the schedule recently for the education portion. So yeah, come check it out. Looks like there's going to be a lot of great people there. So yeah, look forward to meeting you in person.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining. You stole my words. I second that. Please join the RGD Design Educators Conference coming up next month, late next month. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.